have met a lot of you already over the past year and a half or so, being at Creative Mornings and checking you all in. And while I would love to be a full-time Creative Mornings checker-inner, unfortunately it's a gig that only happens once a month, and it also doesn't pay me, so I have to be a strategist. But you know, it's a pretty good job, and I'm excited that Lindsay asked me to talk today about honesty and how that relates to what I do and strategy. So I'll give you kind of a quick spiel about me. Let's see if this will work. Oh no, oh, here we go, okay. Yeah, all the kids ruining my reveal, but we'll start here. So I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. So if you detect a slight southern twang to my voice, that is why. I actually use the word y'all unironically, and I'm proud of it. So how I ended up in Atlanta was by way of my wonderful parents, who are actually refugees. They came over during the Vietnam War. That's actually my dad with his arm on his shoulder right there. I'm like really impressed that we have this picture, and I keep it on my phone and I look at it a lot because it reminds me of everything that they did to get here. And they were just so happy to have this newfound lease in life when they came over to America, and that Atlanta, Georgia had shown us such southern hospitality that it was really important for me to kind of fit in and blend in, and to them that meant doing things like dressing me like this. Oh, okay, we'll do next. That. Oh, okay, all right. Just ruining my reveals. So it meant dressing me up like this. Totally cool, totally normal. No, I was terrified. In fact, if you look like really closely, you can see that the soul is missing from my eye. But once the chaps came off, I was okay. I'm a better, stronger person for this, so I thank them for that. And you know, growing up, I mean, I'm sure it's no surprise to you all, and while I would love to say that I always dreamed of being a digital strategist, cool cowgirls like this one don't really do that. No, they, much to their parents' dismay, want to work in the music industry, and they want to do things like become a music writer and photographer, and I actually did. And I did it for a few years, and it was amazing, until it wasn't. So, you know, a lot of late nights, kind of getting exposed to, like, you know, that whole cliche of never meeting your heroes. Well, I met my heroes and it wasn't fun. And so it started to take a toll on, like, the passion that I had for music. So I started to look at ways that I could apply my skills outside of the music industry so that I could go back to enjoying music as a hobby. And at the time I came across this creative startup in Chicago called CrowdSpring. And they were looking for a community manager. It was 2008, so that type of job was completely new. I don't think Twitter had been around for more than a year, and Facebook, I think, was still only available for college kids at the time. But I knew this job was perfect for me, and that it had all the right components of something that I could just crush. The problem is that I didn't have any experience doing it. But what I did have were friends in famous rock bands. And so at the time, this band, Phantom Planet, I don't know, sometimes I feel like really old because I make references. I'm like, the OC theme song, anybody? So they did that song, California. And they just so happened to be running a promotion with CrowdSpring at the time. So I got my friend, who was the lead singer of Phantom Planet, to give me a glowing recommendation, and I uploaded it to YouTube. So 10 years later, thanks to essentially what was influencer marketing, I'm still working in digital, thanks to Alex Greenwald from Phantom Planet. I haven't talked to him in years, so wherever he is, I hope he's doing well. I think that the last time I saw him was actually on TV. His wife was winning an Oscar and thanking him, so his life turned out really great. And so did mine, just not how I initially thought it would be. So, okay, went through my rock and roll phase, right? And I have spent the bulk of my career as a digital strategist, and I feel super lucky to have done that, because I work mainly in the advertising world and with startups and big brands to create apps, experiences, and campaigns that millions of people get to use every day. And like Lindsay had mentioned, I currently head up marketing strategy for an all-in-one home buying startup based out here called Open Listings. We recently got acquired by another company called Open Door, and we'll talk about that adventure in a second. And right before that, I actually was at an agency called Huge, where I met Lindsay, working on the experience strategy for the latest Hulu redesign. So strategery, as Will Ferrell playing George W. Bush would say, is like a very vague and nebulous term. So when you tell people you're a strategist, obviously that can mean so many things. Like, I still have a really hard time explaining to my parents what I do. They say I do computers, I just let them roll with that. But really what I'm doing is, I like to say that I serve as a creative translator, right? I work as kind of this in-between for the suits who have these business goals, really important kind of things that they need to meet, and the creative teams who want to make something exciting and impactful. So yeah, there it is. So when we talk about strategy and what good strategic thinking looks like, to do it correctly, it's often an involved, lengthy process. And it requires you asking the right questions. Typically those are really hard questions, and coming up with novel answers. And you've got like all these different inputs that you're trying to do. You're trying to listen to the business and understand like what their goals are and their key performance indicators. You're looking at what's out there in the landscape, and then you're trying to see the work to date, and you're talking to people, and you have to distill it all down into a few choice nuggets to create this amazing strategic vision that changes the world. No big deal, right? So, you know, when I say that, I know that it can feel overwhelming, and quite honestly, also like this is not very inspiring, obviously, to a creative team that we're working with. So often, when I work with a creative team, since we're being honest, and that is the theme of today, when my creative team tells me that they need a strategy, they're not asking for that. What they're really asking for is just make me a good presentation and make it all make sense. And what they're really saying when they say just make me a good presentation is just make us look cool, you know, because this is advertising. And ultimately, that's my job. And this is real. I wanted to share with, can you guys read this? I'll read it out loud. But basically, this is a note that I had screenshotted. I had saved it the day before a really big presentation. We had a pitch where literally, like, I want to say $20 million was on the line. So the stakes are large, and I was asked to help kind of come in and do this section. And it was blank, and it was left for me to fill out. And it actually says, Ange, which is me, to complete in terms of making this aspirational for what we plan to achieve. Okay, cool. All right, I can make this aspirational for what we plan to achieve. And at that point, it struck me that my biggest role as a strategist wasn't like to help lead my creative teams to do the right thing, but rather my job was to help them sell the story. And the reality is, no matter how brilliant your idea is, a good idea doesn't matter if you can't bring people along for the ride, right? So this is what I want to share with you today. I'm going to give you 5 of my favorite story selling tricks based off of my extensive day before, last minute experience of helping creatives pull together something aspirational in terms of what we plan to achieve. So this is something any good strategist or PowerPoint pro will have in their toolkit to make their creative team look cool and brilliant, like the little creative geniuses you all are. So maybe you have an idea already, or you don't, and need to present one. So if you ever have a moment where you're just not quite sure what to do, I'm going to help you out. So the first trick for when the presentation panic sets in is to solve the impossible. And what I mean by that is that the goal is to make your idea look brilliant. And like any good story, a good strategic setup should have lots of drama. And gifts, that's also another trick here. And so what we do here is we look for the tension. So one thing that strategists do is they reframe a problem or an ask that a client gets you. And they make it feel insurmountable and bigger than what it really is, right? So this creates this high-stakes situation that will make the creative solution seem like a brilliant idea. So I'll give you an example. A few years back, I was working with Nike on their digital kids division. And the ask from them was just like, what's our vision for the kids e-commerce section? Which they call kids young athletes. Everybody is an athlete within the Nike world. So how do we build a relationship with these kids early on? And if you just tried to solve the problem in front of you and think of ways to get kids to buy Nikes, you'd be missing the cultural tension there. So we kind of had these two big dramatic moments of solving the impossible. The first one was that these people aren't just young athletes, right? Like, we're not just dealing with kids on a basketball team. We're dealing with the future Kevin Durants of the world. We're dealing with the mini Serenas in training. And so to build a relationship early on with these people, the stakes are a lot higher there, right? So after that, kind of setting this, oh man, okay, there's a lot at stake here, we also dug at another cultural tension, which is how kids behave in the world today. So not only are you trying to get the attention of tomorrow's superstars, if only it were just easy to be competing against like Adidas and Under Armour and getting them to pay attention to you instead of your competitors. But really what you're competing for the attention of is the fact that they're all on their smartphones and that they would much rather be playing Fortnite than practicing on the field. So when you build that type of tension and you make the problem seem a lot bigger than it is, and you raise the stakes, create that drama, and ask questions that feel insurmountable, you're able to kind of make your idea seem like an epic resolution to that solution. So trick number 2, since we're creating drama, is to have a mini existential crisis. And strategists, I don't know how many people in here are strategists by trade, but we talk a lot about what we call insights. And those are unspoken truths that we use to talk about the world and illuminate what people really want. And this is important because insights go deeper than observations. So I'm going to use my bud Macklemore here as an example, is that if you were to make an observation about Macklemore in this moment, you might just say that he went to a thrift shop and bought a coat. But he didn't, right? We all know that Macklemore did not go to the thrift shop and write a hit song about it because he wanted a coat and was cold. What he wanted to do was feel like a pimp. And that's the insight. It's important to remember that people don't want to buy stuff, right? The products that they're using that we create, or the ideas and the solutions that we provide them, are really solving unmet needs for them, and it's your job to scratch at that and explain what that is, and find that, and talk about it. And so, why I call it a mini existential crisis is, I'm sure some of you have kids or nieces and nephews. I have this amazing 8-year-old niece, but she's so darn persistent. She's always asking why. She's like, why is this like that? Why did you do that? Why? Why? And you should be that persistent 8-year-old and dig at the issue until you get to the unexpected. So another example I'll give you is at my current company, Open Listings. So I joined the team last year, and we were trying to define how we would attract more millennial home buyers to our service, because that's the #1 segment of people buying homes. And the funny thing about them is, despite how much they're using apps like ours and Redfin and Zillow to go find houses, at the end of the day, they were using traditional real estate agents. Which is interesting because they trust algorithms like Wealthfront to manage their 401ks, and they're depositing checks using their mobile phones. So why not buy a house? Like, what can we do to really get to understand them? So I started to ask why a lot and try to get to the root of the questions of what first-time homebuyers really want and need. And first thing I thought about was like, why is buying your first home so hard? I actually did buy my first home using Open Listings, and there was a lot of just emotions along the way. So it was a problem that I could deeply relate to. But the first thing is there's just a lot of paperwork and jargon. And it got to the point where, I kept asking why, and I realized is that, people are scared, and we're not actually in the business of helping people buy homes. And we're also not in the business of trying to build like realtor alternative tools. Because at the end of the day, like, a first-time home buyer doesn't want a better real estate agent. What they really need and what they're looking for is the confidence to own their future. And we can only win if our service builds tools knowledge and support that meets that need rather than tries to like outbest the best realtor. So when I say to have a mini existential crisis, all you have to do is ask yourself why over and over again until you get to that unspoken truth, that insight, and then pay it off with your idea that supports an insight. Cool. So trick number 3 is to make weird connections. So we all know that nothing is original, everything's been done before. All I'm asking you to do is to not be a lazy thief and steal creatively. So you can make your idea seem really, really brilliant when you think out of the box and show your out of the box connections that you make. So I'll give you a good example. I actually work with a really great digital agency called Heat Waves. Thank you for coming. And they have this super cool, innovative beauty brand that they're working with. It's a startup. And like all good clients, and hopefully the clients and the people that you work with are like this too, they want to push the boundaries. And they're asking, you know, Heat Waves, they're like, how can we be the most innovative beauty brand in the e-commerce space? So if someone asks you to, you know, kind of innovate or kind of think about how to be the best in any space, I know that like it seems kind of natural, and maybe the obvious thing that you would do is look at brands in your space that are crushing it. So for instance, you know, a brand like Glossier. Okay, they're super cool, they're super innovative, so like how do you out-innovate a brand like Glossier? But that's the wrong question. The question that you really need to think about is, how do you create solutions that just make ordering things online like so freaking amazing, easy, and delightful? And we got to talking, and we actually decided that like the most amazing thing in the world when you like to think about ordering things online is actually Domino's. They've done such a good job at like not making you go to a website or pick up a phone or do anything. They have a freaking pizza button. So what if we could just be the pizza button for beauty? And you like run out of something and you're just like, hey Alexa, order me some more lotion, or order me some more like body gel. Or if you're running out of body gel, it just knows because of the RFID sensors. Like, why would we force people to go to a website? I know that we're building a website, but let's not force people to do it, because that's not the right thing to do. And so the trick here that I'm showing you is to pick something provocative and interesting yet successful for another industry that's like completely out of the realm of what you're working on. And frame your idea in that, right? So it's about kind of ignoring the competition and finding the most exciting solution to your problem, not the most relevant one. And showing your clients how they can take really cool stuff from other industries to solve their own challenges. Okay, we're almost done here. So, the fourth one is to be polarizing. I don't know how you all are feeling right now. I only know how I feel when I see this person, but I guarantee you it is not ambivalence. And while being polarizing and being extreme might not be effective in bringing a country together, it definitely helps you stand out from the crowd from a business perspective. And I think about being polarizing, like I guess the business terminology would be like finding your white space, right? And often that looks something like this in the business world. If all the squiggly lines are brands or businesses, you know, the ones that are kind of close together and clumped together are gonna have a lot harder of a time to differentiate. Whereas the brands that fall on like kind of the extremities, they've carved out a definable niche for themselves. So you have a better chance breaking through if you're contrarian. And it can be really straightforward and simple. An exercise I often do, again, I'll talk about open listings, is when we were rebranding ourselves and trying to really figure out our brand identity, voice, and tone. One of the things I like to do, which is kind of contrary to the last trick I told you all about, is that I look at just the other brands in the space and their advertising. You could just like go to mode.com and type in other brands and just throw them all on a slide and try to understand like the commonalities and like what would the contrarian view look like. So for us, one of the things I found was that a lot of the messaging around home buying apps and digital home buying experiences were super lofty. Like it's clear that Compass in the middle had its own mini existential crisis, because its banner ad actually says, have you found your place in the world? Which is like, oh shit, no I haven't, let me click here. Do that, I guess I should do that. But then, you know, everyone here has kind of like this cool, serious palette, And the imagery is very just like kind of stock photography. So when you think about like what's just like a completely opposite direction we could take. So if everybody is cool colored, maybe we should be bright and warm. And if everybody is kind of talking about this lofty desire to own a home and your dream and finding your place in the world, maybe we should convey how easy we are by saying, buy a home online. Yes, really. And if everybody is using stock photography and realistic imagery, what happens if we just use big, eye-catching iconography? So it really can be that simple to go where others aren't and to do what others won't. And all I'm saying is just to illustrate your white space, right? So that's the trick here, is that you need to be able to show how your idea is the complete opposite, and then it'll feel more defensible and unique to your clients or your team. And people normally get stoked about that and get bought in on that because they want to feel different. Okay, so the last thing that I have for you guys, beyond being polarizing and proud of it, but not when you're trying to divide a country, is to get out of your own way. So the last trick is that sometimes things just aren't as complicated as you may think they are and that you make them, right? And that it's not a trick. You know, Occam's razor, we may go through a lot of options to try to get somewhere, but sometimes the best explanation is the simplest. So I have two examples for that. And this one is a project that I am just like super proud of. This is, it's a project called The Simpsons World that I did for FX with my team at Huge, and I want to say 2013 or 2014. And I grew up just watching every single episode of The Simpsons, and we had the honor of being able to put every single episode of The Simpsons on the internet. And at the time, HBO Go had just launched and was winning a bunch of awards, and you know, it was the start of on-demand content, right? But the thing is, through research and strategy, what we saw is like, in the insight, the unspoken truth here, is the beauty of The Simpsons doesn't lie in the fact of it being on demand and being like, oh great, I'm going to go watch season 11, episode 13 now. It's that you can drop into any episode of The Simpsons at any point and just get sucked into this joy, and it feels so comforting. You probably aren't listening to me right now. You're probably just watching The Simpsons, which is exactly what we wanted you to do. And so the idea seems super simple, to just put the episode on the webpage so that you go to simpsonsworld.com and it's just playing, and it doesn't play from the beginning. It plays where it needs to play. But it was radical at the time, you know? Like agencies like the one I was at had been convincing clients to spend lots of money to give users control and fix TV. The idea that TV was broken, but in this case it was the right thing to do. And then another example of simplicity is when we worked with Vans to redesign their website and their e-commerce platform. And I think it can be super tempting when you're working with a brand like Vans that's really, really cool to try and do something crazy and innovative. But the reason we won the work, and the reason why the work actually made them millions of dollars more, is because we realized that Vans is cool, websites aren't. So let's just get out of the way and let the product shine, and just go front and center and take it really big and beautiful. And it worked, and it was the right thing to do. And the trick here isn't about that you just need to do the obvious thing. The presentation trick is that if you want to do the obvious thing and you want to sell it through, you got to show your work. So this works, we do this a lot, but you got to show them that you tried a million other ways and still ended up with the one solution as the right thing to do. And that sometimes it's just as obvious and easy as it seems. So, you know, Dieter Rams that shit, less but better. And that's it. I had a lot more tips in here, but I cut it down in the spirit of less but better, so I'll keep it short and sweet. I just wanted to end this on just one note, which is that I truly believe that most clients, and when I say clients, I mean your coworkers, your bosses, your teams, are good witches in the sense that they want to do the right thing. They want to make really cool experiences. It's just that being a part of a business is scary and can be bureaucratic and often led out of fear. But I truly believe that if you can tell people a compelling story, one with structure and drama and high stakes and emotion, you can bring them along to create really transformational stuff. And if you run into problems, you have like a couple tricks now. So yeah, that's it. Thank you guys so much for having me.